Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is eLearnChat, where it is all about learning. I am joined today by Dr. Susan Nash. Hi, Susan.
Hello. It's a beautiful day today. I'm so happy to be here.
It is. It's nice out here, too. We're having good climate. Excuse me. I've got a little bit of allergies going on. I don't know what it is. I think it's this room. That's probably my office. Old building. Who knows what's in here? But anyway, Harold Muliati is going to join us in a couple of minutes, and we're going to talk about engagement today and how to motivate people with e-learning. Here we go. And something went deadly wrong just there.
Yeah. It didn't quite engage.
It didn't engage, and it missed part of the, let's play the second part of that.
Yes.
That's our sponsor.
I was wondering.
This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks. And that goes to the fact that we should test people more before we start sometimes. Hello, everyone. Was that engaging or what? And Susan, you were talking earlier pre-show about engaging and webinars and online training and how you did a webinar last night that was about business development and how everybody really liked it. It was engaging. What was different about that one?
Well, okay. So first of all, it had something that people could, the ordinary person felt like it could be actionable for them. It had to do with energy storage and carbon, things that usually like really large companies can only do. Mm-hmm. But the topic of this was called an independent look at carbon capture, usage and storage. And then they talked about how you could convert all of these flared wells that people want to get rid of because they're just wasting gas and just creating light pollution and burning methane, etc. How you could turn that into something that you could get tax credits for, plus generate electricity, and the little guy could do it. So they went through a lot of information that there was kind of the information that you would need to get started. So that was one of the key components. It wasn't just a lot of generalities. And then they talked about like different kinds of free software that you could use, and they showed how to do it, how you could like actually start modeling it and planning. And then the next thing they did is they opened up a lot of time for questions. And so we had a lot of people who were thinking, okay, they were eager to know how they could do it and how they could get started. So it was so different than the ones where I hear they're super technical or they're out of reach for the average person, just going, nice to know, but I can't do it.
And what you're saying is sort of interesting because you're talking about lessening taxes. That was one. Mm-hmm. Free stuff makes everybody excited. That was two. And so that you've got them already hooked on the free and the taxes. Save taxes.
So I can do it.
So you could do that. Anybody could do that. That's a good one. If you can come up with anything that, if you look at why people buy software and stuff, a lot of times there's contests. For the first 5 people come in, you're going to get it for free. And people jump in. And, in e-learning, we usually don't do anything to promote anything exciting. Just saying. I mean, a lot of times, how do you get people to go take a course? So they're mandated to take it. For example, in most companies, mm-hmm. you have to take 20 compliance courses. You have to take OSHA courses. You have to take HR courses. And everything's mandated. You have to take it. So people are like, I don't want to take that. But the thing is, how do you make that more exciting? How do you make that more interesting and engaging? Because a lot of it is boring. And everybody kind of admits, well, it is boring, but we need it for the regulators or for whoever else they need it for. And
they can't relate to it.
No.
It's so outdoors for somebody else or, whatever. They don't see the opportunity for them either. And so if you mix knowledge with like actionable stuff that can make you get you free stuff or open a door for you, that's a lot better.
And I guess this goes back to something that we we do include in our courses sometimes, but it's something that I guess people generally want to know out of training, which is what's in it for me. You know, people want to know, how does this actually affect me? How do I know that I'm not just here learning things that I don't really need to learn and won't be relevant to my job?
Well, for example, we did a regulatory course for a sales organization within a large bank. And so I immediately said, let's put in some WIFM buttons. What's in it for me? Because salespeople want to know what's in it for them. They're the perfect motivators for that. You know, how am I going to make money out of this? Am I going to make more sales? Great. So what's in it for me? So we have the WIFM button. So when they read something boring, they're like, they go, oh, WIFM? Dunk. Oh, that's good. So, you know, you run into that, and it becomes kind of primordial, but it works.
It's a solution to something where, you know, a lot of times because of the regulators and stuff like that, there's a lot of this text that you kind of have to plop in there that's not really, it's going to bore people. It's
not exciting.
You have to have it in there. But having an alternate, you know, the thing that you click on and then it tells you actually what you need to know, that's one solution to having sort of satisfying both sides of that equation.
Let me ask you, Susan, when was the last time you developed a course for someone and they allowed you to have humor?
Oh my goodness. I have found that my attempts to inject humor, they go sort of well sometimes, but then I find what it's like, and they go, why are you on to this pirate thing? why do you have so many pirate examples?
Well, that's funny.
It was interesting.
I kind
Arg, Susan.
A lot of time traveling.
I kind of feel like with the humor, a lot of times it comes down to being essentially a ticking time bomb where, you know, maybe the people you first showed it to, they love it. They think it's very clever and it's memorable, but then it's just until it gets to that one sensitive person that sees it and I don't get this, or it's they
right. And that can happen. But,
yeah.
you know, we had one client in the last, I'd say about 27 years, one who said, I want this funny, I want it clever, I want it different. Even that's before we really had videos that we could do easily online. They were kind of heavy back then. And so these were done in authorware back then. And we had all sorts of funny scenarios and and they were really popular. These were mostly OSHA training. And this is a guy who's an colonel in the Air Force. This is for Southern California Edison, which is a big utility company. And so here's an ex-Army, Air Force colonel. You wouldn't think he'd have a great sense of humor. He really wanted it to be funny. He wanted humor, and they worked out. We did about 20 different pieces, and they all were very well received. In fact, some of them, believe it or not, to this day are still running. It's kind of amazing. All because there was some humor.
Like humor.
They do, and it was nothing really.
They do, and I've had really good with things like in like first year composition where people ask people to write about naughty pet, and then they tell a story about their pets and some naughty thing that they did, and then they love that, and it is really funny.
And people like things they can relate to somehow, one way or another. So maybe a common experience that we all have. And then if we can make it funny, or we can make a bad experience funny, then people start laughing at it. Or really retention comes down to one basic thing, and people have a hard time dealing with this one. It comes down to emotion. If your content has some emotional charge, whether it's laughter, misery, sadness, whatever it is, whatever that charge is emotionally, all of a sudden people will remember it. We did a video one time years ago, not that many years ago, it's probably about 10, 15 years ago, which is an eternity today. But it was a video of, it was a safety video for linemen. Again, people who are out there dealing with 50,000 watt things, it's like, bzzz, they make one wrong move, they could get killed. And it happened. Oh, yeah. Somebody died. And so they put a video together that was a music video. It's about a 4 or 5 minute video, the whole thing. And it showed a lineman rushing through her day fast. She's always looking at her watch. It had no dialogue at all. None. Zero. She's always looking at her watch. I'm late. We had a couple of where it went to black and it says, I'm running late. Then it goes back. And finally, by the end of the day, she's made so many mistakes that she makes one last one that was really a deadly one. She electrocutes herself for not putting on the correct equipment. And so we had a death scene where it's the first time we killed anybody on camera. So we shot her first up here, and then we had all the special effects, and then she's on the floor with the camera circling around her. So it gave that feeling. And that was shown. Oh, and the final scene was, because it started with her hugging her granddaughter. The picture, she looks at the picture, and in her mind, she remembers her granddaughter, and she's giving her a hug. And at the end, you see the scene where they're going to a funeral. Her family and her granddaughter are going to the funeral, and you see her in the clouds hugging her granddaughter, and that's how it ends.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that the granddaughter hugs the grandmother's picture.
No, she hugs her, but now she's in the clouds.
Right, and in the clouds as an angel.
And they said they showed that to about 150 linemen, and they said they were all crying. They actually thought it was real. They knew her.
Wow.
Because they used the real, and they thought, oh my God, did she die? But it hit them so hard because they've all lost friends from that same exact thing, from mistakes. And you go, so that's a place where emotion made a huge difference. As far as I know, they haven't had any of those injuries since, and that's been like 15 years.
That's wonderful.
So that's a use of emotion, and that was a great idea.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because I know, like, we had, I used to be in charge of a blowout prevention school, and they did training. And, you know, that's another area where you can have, well, we know of horrible accidents. I don't think anybody who trained there was at Macombo, hopefully, but that was a different thing. That really wasn't about drilling. And the other thing, too, in closed containers in OSHA training. Yeah, that's another area where it kills people every year.
Yeah, and a lot of the times it's for not following procedures. They don't put on their PPE, their personal protective equipment, or they have the people around them but not paying attention to the guy in the hole or the guy and so as a result they make mistakes. And actually, we had one of the people who used to work with us years ago. He was in sales, and his brother worked at a very large utility company. And one day, we had just done one of those videos, those safety videos, and he goes on and goes, my brother just had a major accident. He's in the burn center with major burns on his hands and face. And we said, what happened? Well, he had gone into a manhole. Everything was good, but he was missing his PPE, I think one of the gloves or both of them. And the 4 people around him, nobody caught it, including a lineman. And that caused the accident. The guy could have been killed. And that's the kind of stuff and it's not that they didn't care or they all loved each other. These guys work really tightly together. Right. But sometimes they get too used to the situation. They forget. They become too trusting of what their skill is, and they forget that it's dangerous. You can make one simple wrong move, and you could be either maimed, hurt, killed, and you could hurt many people. So this is where training has to be very blunt. You can't hide what you're doing. You can't make it, soft. We did one safety. Well, we did one training that we did in the jail system in Los Angeles, and they wanted this very rank to the point. There were a lot of expletives in the training, and people would see it and go, oh, "That's rude." No, that's how they talk. They're in jail. These are not people there for their perfect English and grammar and their politeness and courtesy. A lot of them are pretty down and dirty. So we wrote it just like they would hear it. And the police like that because that's what they hear every day. And it talks scenarios.
It's like The Wire. It likes The Wire because they said it was authentic.
Yeah. And the whole thing is, if you don't teach it real, they're not going to learn. They're not going to learn. I remember when I was learning martial arts when I was younger, when I first started out, you have this thing where people go, okay, now throw a punch, bam, and you throw a punch. and then you're supposed to throw it at the next person who's supposed to either block it or do something. So invariably, everybody goes, okay, the guy's in front of you right there, or the girl, whoever, and you throw the punch. And my teacher would go, you missed him by 1.5 feet. Throw it at him. What if he misses? Then he will learn to block better next time.
Well, what you're saying is really interesting because it personalizes it. And, now we have so many software tools. You can do SoftJava or whatever to create pathways, decision tree, so that people can go down those pathways and say, okay, you forget to, here's what you're going to use, and then you forget a glove, and then, boom, here's the consequence. And I think those things are effective, especially when you use images. If you can't afford you can at least immerse people into the consequences of their decisions.
Well, the other thing is you can use images, but you have a camera. You have a video crew right in your pocket. You could take out your camera crew. My phone. It's got a very good camera in it. You could grab 2 or 3 of the people in your group and say, hey, let's go film a scenario. It'll take 5 minutes. And you can film a scenario. You can add the effects later of a fire or a spark or something. But you could quickly film a scenario showing somebody getting hurt. Now you put that in the training video. Wow, that's a lot more effective than, which device did you forget? Did you forget your glove or your helmet or your goggles? Now you're showing it. And that's more effective because all of a sudden now you've got humans doing it, not just a graphic.
Well, and I think
that's true.
I think, nowadays it is really important to kind of hit people on every front because just the baseline level of what people are paying attention to tends to have, it has the visual, it has the audio, they're reading stuff. So you have to hit people on all fronts for them to really be able to pay attention to it nowadays. I think.
And they're desensitized to everything.
Yeah.
So how do you get their attention?
I will say, and so what would be interesting what both of you are saying, and Harold, you made a good point about if you have so many things going, it can be distracting. One of the things that happened last night, Zoom it has the capacity to somebody pressed on the thing to ask for closed captioning. So I go, okay, we'll do. But I really think it was a bad idea. I know that it's ADA, to be ADA compliant, you have to have some closed captioning. But it's much better to do it on the recording and not as live because a lot of people don't know how to turn that off or whatever. And then it becomes distracting. And then in technical terms, they're often wrong.
So on Zoom, you can turn on closed captioning just for the person who needs it. It goes to everybody.
It goes to everybody, and then the individual can turn it off, but sometimes they don't know how.
Oh, okay.
And I was looking at it, and I was thinking, this is really distracting because it gets into the actual slides and things. But I think that, I know that we need to have closed captioning for hearing impaired, and also it's very useful if somebody's having issues with English. Except sometimes because
I'm not sure I'm familiar with what you're talking about right now. Is it like an automatic closed captioning that's in Zoom?
Yes.
Oh, and the thing with that is also it could be getting things wrong and showing people a different thing on the screen.
It does.
That becomes more distracting.
Exactly. Especially if it's highly technical or if the person is speaking rapidly or with an accent. It actually was more destructive, I think. I think it's much better to go ahead and just give them the transcript.
Right.
Yeah. You're probably right because it's a hard one to, and even the best translators don't really caption well. They're okay. They'll get you about 90%, maybe, if the person's very clear and not too fast or not accentuated. If you have a lot of accents, your host, it's really hard.
Yeah, and I think that I realize that it's required for ADA compliance.
Yep.
But I really think that it's better if it's on demand or if you can at least go, if you do turn it on, to everyone say, okay, let's go take a moment to figure out how to turn this off if you don't need it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, but the whole key is to engage people is to get their attention. And not a lot of stuff gets people's attention right now. It's hard to get somebody to focus. And in a remote world, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Because now they're just going, yeah, I'm looking at my Zoom. What's that?
Meanwhile, their dog is on their lap.
Yeah. Hey, Fluffy. How you doing? Wait. I got a phone call coming in. Hold on.
Yeah.
I got to go bathroom, too. I'll be back.
Oh,
and as soon as they get back...
And by the time you're done, the conference call's over. You miss most of it, but it doesn't matter because everybody else wasn't paying attention either. And you just go, how did anything ever get done? So these are problems with remote working that are a reality. People aren't so desk bound.
And the thing is, when you're taking training, if it's not if it's asynchronous, then as opposed to being on a conference call, when you're taking training, there isn't another person right there watching you. So you're even less likely to be paying attention. You're just going to be goofing off.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a really good point. Like when I'm designing a course for asynchronous delivery, always chunk it. So break it up, and then if there's a certain sequence, have people do things like check their knowledge, have little things that are interesting instead of just long blocks of the same.
Now, there's the other thing too that everybody talks about short attention spans and just-in-time learning or micro learning, whatever you want to call it now. But the thing is, there's still a propensity among instructional designers and writers who usually don't write all that well to create extremely long courses, blah, 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 blah. I call it scientific American syndrome of the old days. They have to impress somebody with their knowledge of jargon and verbiage and blah, blah, blah. But as a result, you've lost most of your audience by then. The courses are just horrifically long. There's a professor friend I know that he was doing a talk one time, and he's a great guy, and he's a great teacher. But you looked at his PowerPoint and it said 1 of 268, and the razor blades come out. Time to kill myself. One of 268. That's a lot of slides, and it was not a deck without a lot of content. So immediately people are thinking, how do I get out? I can escape. How? And that's the whole thing. Why put something there? Let people wonder how long the course is, then flat out tell them. They'll be miserable. It'll never end. That course will be like 600 slides by the time it's done. And that's the kind of thing that, how do we engage people when the content isn't all that exciting? There's no emotion whatsoever. So there's nothing to even tug at your retention capability. And the brain has an interesting habit of remembering very well what affected it. It doesn't remember a damn thing when it's not emotional usually, or it takes a long time to memorize it.
And the other thing that I found to be extremely engaging is if you, and especially this works with, if you have them create a solution to a realistic problem.
Yeah.
And so there's something, for example, I have a scenario where the problem is that there's a colony of feral cats next to a business, and someone has been feeding the feral cats, and they're starting to overrun the business. So how do you solve that problem? So they have groups to come up with ways to solve that problem.
Well, that's an easy one, actually. You burn the business down.
Save the cats.
Let's save the cats. Anyway, well, I live in California. That could be a solution here.
Well, usually it has to do with, first it's like they ask them nicely to not feed the cats.
Right.
And then say, can we have a cat adoption? Or can we spay and neuter them? Or, or can we, just different things. But sometimes they do get a little bit silly. Like,
right.
we were just going to take them in the middle of the night and take them to the rescue place.
Right. Feral cats can be really difficult too. Just saying. They're feral.
Well, they can.
They can.
Well,
They're
they
not
can,
like a normal
and
kitty cat who's really loving usually. They're pretty weird.
yeah, and especially if they've been eating a lot of Chipotle and stuff that people are bringing.
Now you have an angry Chipotle cat. That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Who thinks he's a tiger? Yes.
I breathe a lot.
I breathe. I killed you now. Yeah. By the way, we're not making fun of Chipotle cats, okay? Just so relax out there. Both Susan and I speak Spanish pretty well, so I consider myself bilingual. You're pretty bilingual too. You speak well.
Oh, thank you. Gracias.
No hay por qué. So anyway, how do you get more emotion into training, especially when people are so afraid of anything that could even minutely cause a complaint or a lawsuit or whatever else? It's a tough one.
Like one of our favorites. Don't use the color red. It's going to scare them.
Well, yeah. Huh? And it's true. We had one client would say, "Can't use red." Why? It's bad. It's going to scare them. Okay. But if they were Chinese, they would think it's good luck.
Yeah.
They give red envelopes and things. I mean, this is a good luck thing.
Exactly.
Of course, that's the other thing. When you're talking about emotion, you've got to be careful about the culture where you are teaching.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Not everybody recognizes emotion the same exact way. And that can cause all sorts of grief and issues because if you use colloquialisms that may work, let's say, in the U.S., but not in Germany, you may
or
do
not
something.
In England.
Oh, I've seen some training. This happened to me once actually in real life, but I've actually seen it in training which did go out to Germany. And they had a graphic of a person going,
"Oh, no."
Well, you know what that means in German. You
Yes,
are
it's bad.
a sphincter, a lower part of your body sphincter. It's an insult. And so you may think that means okay here, not so okay in other places. When I lived in Argentina, it was funny. They had no idea back then, it probably changed now, but back then, nobody gave anybody the finger like we do routinely here among certain types. And it's a rude gesture, but they had no idea. You could give somebody, and they would just go, huh? But you could do a movement like this, and that now is equivalent there. I don't know if I told this story on this show, but one time I was doing a martial arts exhibition. There were about 5,000 people. And I was doing a form, which is a set of prearranged movements. And one of the movements in the form is you block, boom, and you hit.
Oopsie.
And there were 5,000 that happened. And as I did that, I went, "Oh dear, I think I screwed up." It was just a moment. It all happened very quickly. And I realized as I did that, uh-oh. So I never did that move again publicly in terms of a demo because it would be misconstrued. But that is a very viable move in a lot of martial arts. It simulates a block punch. And you just slap yourself. So, and culturally, I totally forgot that they're mostly Italian, and that's not a good thing in Italy. No. And but it was funny. It was a good experience, but it was interesting. We got the reputation. They're really bad guys. I saw him in an exhibition. They do mean things.
And they're rude.
And they're rude. Yep. And plus he was wearing a black uniform, so he's even worse. They're mean, they're scary, they're like ninjas. So so it was one of those things you live and learn and realize I really shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. And sometimes you just forget the simple things because it doesn't have that much importance where you're from or where you learned it.
Mm-hmm.
The joy of emotion.
And I know we're out of time now, we've got to talk sometime about unfortunate translation choices.
Oh, and there's a lot. You've done a lot of international work, so you've been through it, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember we kind of skimmed on it when we were talking with Gary Schulteis from Global eLearning, but we didn't quite go into the really juicy sorts of things.
No, that's true, because a lot of it, really, you have to be very sensitive to the different cultures, because we're very freeform here, and nobody seems to care about that, but other cultures are much more rigid, more traditional. It's an insult. It could cause grief.
Yes, exactly. And I know. Yeah, I remember preparing training for cultures, and it'll be interesting. Let's plan to do one on this topic, because
I think that'd be a good one.
Yeah,
it'd be a good one and interesting, because we run into that all the time. Can you imagine the headlines? E-learning course sparks major war.
Wow, someone remembered my course.
Yeah. And then all you could say is the author would say, to save himself or herself, great, they retained all that they learned.
It was engaging.
It was engaging.
People retained it that didn't even take the course.
That's right. Gotta love it. But anyway, good topic today. That was interesting. Thank you.
Fun.
And next week we'll be back on and we'll talk about something else. Maybe we'll talk about some of how that affects people, the cultural ramifications of finger gestures or whatever.
Or translations.
Translation. Oh yeah, translations can get really bad. I've seen some that you just go, do they know what they just said?
Right.
It's kind of not a good one what they did, and they're totally oblivious. Take Spanish. Now, you've been around South America and you've been to different countries. The insult of one country is not the insult of another.
Oh, exactly. And I'll never forget in Paraguay, I was listening to somebody talk about a friend, and I thought, why are you using that word? It didn't mean anything bad there, but it was a very bad word in Mexico.
Interesting. Yeah.
What was the word?
I'm not going to repeat it.
Never mind.
You almost got me there.
Yeah. It's a tough one. I went through one of those in Mexico, actually. And then, did I tell this story recently? I don't know. But I was in Mexico, and there happened to be I went to do a webinar a seminar in martial arts, and then at the end there were several of us had gotten together, about maybe 10 or 15 of us, to have a dinner afterwards. And in the dinner, I said something in Spanish about chiches. Chiches. I go, I love chiches in Spanish. Well, chiches in Argentina is toys. You could have juguetes or chiches. Well, they're all looking at me like, and one of them says, we like them too, but we don't talk about it in public. And I went, what did I say? And they went, chiches. And I go, what does it mean to you? And he goes, and I went,
no.
Sorry. That's not what I said. It means toys. And they all went, oh. And then they start laughing because they realized I had no idea what I said. And so that, again, you're speaking a language you know well in a country that you have friends there and you talk all the time. Yeah. But that I never talked about toys per se. And we were talking about some sort of toy, electronic thing or something. And sure enough, the looks I got were like, it was actually pretty funny. At the moment, I was like, what did I just say? I don't know. And when he explained it, they all started just giggling like, what a dummy.
I love it.
Gotta love it. Anyway, well, thank you again for coming on today, and thank you for watching the show. I imagine we had no comments because you didn't say anything.
Didn't get anyone.
Nope, not today. We'll be back next week and with another stimulating show. We have a guest coming on soon, too. Do we have David Kelly rescheduled?
We have to reschedule him.
We have to reschedule him. So maybe he'll be on next week or the week after. Anyway, have a good one, everyone. We will see you very soon on eLearnChat. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.